Good afternoon to everybody. This is a short Torah for Parshat Pinchas. Everybody knows about the daring deed that Pinchas did, that he killed a Nasi Israel and the Midianite woman, a princess who he consorted with. And the Torah says that because he did such a daring, brave and great thing. So first of all, he stopped a plague, which until now devastated the Jewish people. 24,000 people were killed. And number two, Hashem, in this week's Parsha, promises Pinchas an everlasting covenant, whatever that means. He'll be always, from his family will emerge Kohanim Gedolim. This is not what we want to go into. But what I did want to go into was the reaction of Pinchas, in which he did something very violent. The Torah calls it kanaut. Kanaut means zealousness, passion. We found that this type of reaction is, we found that it's always been done, at least in the Tanakh, basically in connection with sexual misconduct. The first time we found this phenomenon of kanaut, of zealousness, is of course concerning Shimon and Levi. And what's the context? So remember that Dinah, who was one of the daughter of Yaakov, so she went to look around to skirt the area of Shechem. She was basically abducted and raped, and then the person, the rapist, what he wanted to do is that he's infatuated with Dinah and he wants to marry her. And we all know the end of the story is that Shimon and Levi, they had a Brit Milah, and Shiva, in other words, the people from Shechem, and Shimon and Levi went into the city on the third day. And what they did was they killed all the people over there, and then what they did was they rescued Dinah. So the first time, again, that we see in the Torah, this absolute zealousness, which is so questionable. After all, it was criticized by Yaakov, but we see it in that context, a context of first brothers who their sister was like basically kidnapped and raped. So there was a little bit of negotiations, but I mean with the father and a little bit with Hamor, but basically the end result was that the reaction and the response of the tribes of Israel was to kill the rapist. The second time we found over here is in our Parasha, in the Parasha when quite like publicly. So Zimri takes a Midianite princess. They set up a tent, basically in the public eye, and what he does is that he has sexual relations with her. And the halakha is that in such a situation, kana'im pogim ba, that in other words, that there is a right of a person who is truly zealous to go and to kill the person. If, for example, everyone knows these laws, if, for example, Zimri would have defended himself and killed Pinchas, then that's it. It was okay to do that. But that's one of the many laws and the details concerning the Inyan of Kana'im Pogimbo. But the third place, which is actually not in the Torah, but is connected to the Chag of Chanukah, we found the same sort of type of reaction. And I'd want to build from these three examples like a principle. In the case of Chanukah, there were various times in which the revolt started and started and revolt, but one of the times were that, remember, the Greeks had the abominable practice of that a woman on her wedding night, that if the governor or the mayor of the town happened to be at the same town where the wedding took place, he had the prerogative to first sleep with the woman, and then afterwards she went with her husband. That was one of the practices of Greek, in inverted commas, culture. So We all know about Yehudit, that on her wedding night, she sort of cajoled the governor wanted to be with her. And what she did was she set things up in such a way that afterwards she decapitated him. She cut off his head, and she brought it to the people, and then that sparked a rebellion. If they thought that, yeah, as a woman who had the courage to do such a thing and to kill a leading general of the Greeks, so what are we sitting around for? What we have to do is we also have to take up arms, and despite the fact that the odds are against us, to fight for the sake of the Torah and Hashem. So, B'kitzur, if we take now all these three examples, but what emerges? What emerges that there's certain things in which we can fight passion only with passion. There's sometimes that the response for a breach in the way of the Torah and Yiddishkeit is not to have long discussions and seminars and dissertations, etc., but pashut, that a person has to act with a sense of a fire and desire. Now, I don't mean now that no one should get me wrong. I'm not saying now that we should go now at the time that there is, to our great dismay, gay parades in Eretz Israel, that we should all go now and go and attack the people. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that, yes, sometimes leave now the medical side, etc. But I'm saying the protest that, yes, a family is a man and a woman, a mother and a father, etc. All those things should be said with passion, and the protest should be with passion. It doesn't have to be a public protest, but it should be a protest at least with us, to shout out and to scream that this is mamash against the Torah. All the times, as I say, where there are sexual breaches, because the desire and the drive of sexuality is so strong. So to have like all sorts of at the time all sorts of dissertations and lectures are not going to work. They're not going to. That's not the way that we deal with these things. First, what we deal is, as I say, on a way of emotion, of will, and then afterwards, what we do is we starts maybe a little bit more of understanding. That's what emerges from this passion, from these three cases. When I speak again about passion, let me give an example from Yosef. When Yosef was about to be seduced with Potiphar's wife, so the Torah says there were three stages. Phase number one was that he said, I'm not doing this. Now, he's not getting into reasons now why he's not doing this. This is something which is immoral, it's something reprehensible, and I'm not doing it. And he refused. Afterwards, the second party said that he started with a certain reasoning. That's phase number two, but that came afterwards. He said, you know what, is this correct? Your husband who trusts me in everything, who puts everything into my power, is this what I'm going to do? God forbid. And then the third phase is that he didn't hang around. Vayanos vayetze hachutza. What he did was he fled. He fled for his life. He didn't sit now more or less in a time and walk casually about. He now, with a sense of passion and invigoration, what he did was he responded to the seduction by running away. Not only running away, the Torah says vayanos. He would have fled for his life. That's what we tried to say. And let me conclude with, on a personal level, I remember the late Chief Rabbi Harris of South Africa, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, a great man. But I remember him once debating on the television with a person who was, he used to put out a pornographic magazine. It was b'mechila. I say it like not with criticism, but with pain. It was a ridiculous argument, because here you had a person who, if he's an editor of a pornographic magazine, he's got no sense of values. He's got no sense of that there's a person's made up of a guf and he's made up of a neshama. He's made up of spirit and soul, and he's made up of body. That person was all body. He was like a baboon. You couldn't speak to him. And then you're going to try now to reason with such type of people about the ups and the downs and the negatives, etc., of looking at such trash. So what did he do? It was a losing battle. It was terrible to see. And this is what comes out from over here from Parshat Pinchas. There's certain things that we're not going to have lectures on. We're not going to open up for a person like Zimri, start opening up Gemarot. A person who now publicly takes a woman and he sleeps with her. So the only way then to deal with such a person who is impervious, has got no sense of shame. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is that the Torah says when there's such a desecration of Chilul Hashem, of everything that was holy into the Jewish people, then Kana'im Pogimam, those people who have got a sense of love and outrage, so that's what they must do. They must get up now and they protest, even if it sometimes means, it doesn't always, even if it sometimes means that in killing the person who caused this Chilul Hashem and brought about the death of 24,000 people who followed suit. Shabbat Shalom Lekula.